Game 3. White, F.J. Marshall. Black, J.R. Capablanca. Fifth match game, New York, 1909. Nobody but nobody ever used the tactical weapon of Zwischenzug to such good effect as Capablanca. This witty interposition of an unexpected move before making an obvious reply, such as a recapture, usually changes the state of affairs. There may be no intent to disconcert the opponent, but it often gives him a bit of a jolt. Capablanca's games abound in these clever little Zwischenzüge, and they offer evidence of the thought he gave to even the most natural moves before making them. d4, d5, c4, e6, knight c3, knight f6, bishop g5, bishop e7, e3, knight e4. Capablanca knew little opening theory at that time, but was impressed by Lasker's success with this move against Marshall and decided to try it himself. Bishop takes e7, queen takes e7, bishop d3. A better course was c takes d5, knight takes c3, b takes c3, e takes d5, queen b3. And white's pressure on the knight file makes it difficult for black to develop his bishop. Back to the game. After bishop d3, knight takes c3, b takes c3, knight d7, knight f3, castle, queen c2, h6, castle, c5, rook f e1, d takes e4, bishop takes e4, b6, queen to e4. Capablanca points out that this attractive looking move not only gains white no advantage, but practically compels black to post his pieces to good effect. His bishop to b7, knight to f6, and the rooks at c8 and d8, from which squares they can attack the center. Rook b8, bishop d3, knight f6, queen f4, bishop b7, e4, rook f to d8, rook a d1, rook b c8. Black's moves are timed, says Herman Helms, with a precision that discloses the mind of a master player. Rook e3. White's position looks imposing, but a few sharp moves by Capablanca expose the weaknesses. C takes d4, c takes d4, rook c3, bishop b1, g5, knight takes g5. Rather than submit tamely to the loss of a pawn by queen g3, rook takes e3, f takes e3, knight takes e4, Marshall takes his chances on stirring up an attack by giving up a knight for 2 pawns. But, as the old novelist used to say, he reckons without his host. Back to the game. After knight takes g5, rook takes e3, queen takes e3. On f takes e3, knight h5, followed by queen takes g5, wins quickly. So, queen takes e3, knight g4, queen g3, queen takes g5, h4. If queen c7, then rook c8, queen takes b7, rook c1, queen b8 check, king g7, rook to f1, queen d2, and the threats of mate by queen takes f2 or rook takes f1 check cannot both be parried. Back to the game. h4, queen g7, queen c7, rook takes d4. Although this pretty move led to a win, Capablanca commented objectively that the better move, overlooked by all the analysts, was queen to f6. On queen f6, the king is provided with an additional flight square at g7. I was highly praised, says he, because of the excellence of my play in this position, while in reality, I could have done better. Back to the game. Rook takes d4, queen b8 check, king h7, e5 check, bishop e4, rook takes d4, bishop takes b1, queen takes a7. Black has a bit of material advantage with knight and bishop against a rook. He will try to initiate an attack on the king while keeping a weather eye open on white's potentially dangerous queen rook pawn. Knight takes e5, threatening knight f3, winning a whole rook. Rook f4. Bishop e4. Now the idea is knight f3. For example, knight f3, king f1, queen a1 check, king e2, queen e1 mate. If king h1, queen a1 mate. Meanwhile, the bishop is taboo. If rook takes e4, there follows knight f3 check, king f1. Again, if king h1, queen a1 check will lead to mate. So queen f1 and knight d2, check, and the rook comes off. Back to the game. g3, knight f3 check, king g2, f5, queen takes b6. An attempt to simplify instead by exchanging queens leads to disaster. Queen takes g7 check, king takes g7, rook takes f3, king g6. And white is in zugzwang. Sooner or later, he will have to play g4 when the reply f4 or f takes g4 will win the pinned rook. Back to the game. Queen takes b6, knight takes h4 check, king h2. According to Capablanca, if king h3, queen a1 would win at once. So king h2, knight f3 check, rook takes f3. White decides to fight it out with a passed pawn against a bishop. The alternative being king g2, knight g5 check, followed by queen a1 winning. Back to the game. Rook takes f3, bishop takes f3, queen takes e6, bishop takes e4, f3, bishop d3. Not bishop takes f3, win. Queen f5 check, picks up the bishop. So bishop d3, queen d5, queen b2 check, king g1, bishop b1. This pretty problem-like move provides a hiding place for the queen at a1. It is from now on, says Capablanca, that it can be said that I played well. The ending is worth studying. a4, queen a1. The queen now attacks the passed pawn and at the same time threatens to win the queen by a discovered check. Queen b7 check, but not queen f7 check, as queen g7 forces an exchange of queens or wins the g-pawn. So queen b7 check, king g6, queen b6 check. White checks at this square for two reasons. A, he wants this queen on a black square out of range of a possible discovered attack by the bishop. And B, he wants to protect his rook pawn when it moves up a square. King h5, king h2, bishop a2, queen b5. Now there is a threat of queen e8 check leading to mate, as well as the brutal one of instant mate by queen takes f5 check, king g6, a5, queen d4, queen c6 check, queen f6, queen e8 check, queen f7, queen a4, Queen e6, a6. White has no more checks, and this is all that's left. Queen e2 check, but black has a powerful check on tap, and he uses it. King h3, bishop d5, a7. Bishop takes f3. White resigns. There are still no checks, and mate into is threatened. In the handling of this endgame, says Herman Helms in the American Chess Bulletin, Capablanca has provided a rare treat.